glad we all could make it here today, in spite of all the obstacles that were put in front of us. This year, I'm pleased to announce that the research phase of what I'm doing here is just about completed. And after this conference, I'll be going into the development stage for practical products. Naturally, I'd like to use what I've gleaned from my radioactive research to ultimately produce what many of you consider to be as free energy. Actually, it's not free energy because nature has stored it. It took nature perhaps billions of years to store this energy, and we have a means to very safely tap into this energy that nature stored for us, convert it directly into electricity. But however, we don't want to do it the way that conventional science has taught us to tap into this energy. Conventional nuclear reactors are force fission in these natural storehouses of energy into giving up energy very quickly. And in that process, deadly radioisotopes are created, and that's where radioactivity is harmful to man. But if we utilize it the way that it was given to us, then it can propel humankind into the next century and solve many of our problems that we face today. I'm going to do something different this year. Instead of going into my speech, I'd like to go into the experiment that I left off at the last conference. I wasn't, we held up an antenna and a virtual ground, and I did get a spark arc across the spark gap here, but I wasn't happy with that because I knew that in my laboratory I was getting much better results. I couldn't understand why. At first I thought maybe because it was all the radioactivity that had soaked into my bench over the years, and it was giving me different results here. After a few months I discovered it was the potting material that I was using in the solid state valve. And what was happening is I was using paraffin wax, and it was arcing out, carbonizing and shorting out the valve. And I've been able to resolve that issue and show you what I wanted to originally show last year. And I will also go into some of the advances I've made as far as bringing a practical product to the people. And from this research and development, we're going into the development stage now. I've been able to take advantage of some of the spin-off results that I've seen over the years. And one of them is I've been able to develop a fuel cell that does not need platinum as a catalyst. And this is why the fuel cell has been impractical, because the cost of platinum. And I've got a provisional patent on this year. And if any of you don't have a copy of that, see me at my booth at the end of this lecture here, and I'll be glad to give you a free copy. And the provisional patents for it outlines my fuel cell process without the catalyst material. And I'll show you a formula after I get this started up here that I found a formula in the old text that perhaps is shown in chemistry school in the universities, but it's not really used for anything, so it's forgotten. And what I was able to do was take that half of the equation and balance it with another half of the equation, and it gives us a clear picture of what's actually happening in the fuel cell. And I believe it's also the equation that we can use to see what's happening in the so-called cold fusion reaction that they've seen. knowing this, having this full equation in front of us, we can add the reactants to the fuel cell without the catalyst material. Catalyst material produces these two separate reactions in the anode and cathode. By knowing what the catalyst actually does, because we now have this equation, enables us to create it outside of the cell electronically and produce a very practical fuel cell that could do away with combustion engines and lessen noise pollution. If you have less noise pollution in, say, New York City, people may be less stressful and they won't be killing each other as much, I think it will have a very positive effect on society if I can implement this. And I think I'm going in the right direction. So I'm going to start off by asking for 2 volunteers like I did last year. 2 volunteers that aren't afraid of high voltage. Mind you, this is about 35,000 volts. The amperage is very, very, very low. And I will give you a pair of protective rubber gloves so that there won't be any possibility of you getting a shock. I got 2 here. I think this was a gentleman I had last year too. Okay, you want the antenna ground? Does it matter?
Whichever way you want me to have
Let's find the end of this. Okay, this represents the ground, so the antenna.
Bruce, would you mind kind of keep walking us through this and telling us what you're doing as you're going along?
What I'm doing now is I'm preparing for an antenna.
We're the pole.
And virtual grounds aren't very effective, but we'll see what happens here. And I hate to hook up the wall ground because it's going to look like it's pulling power out of the wall socket. So we'll just have to take what we have.
So that's going to be an antenna, right?
Right. That's going to the input of the valve.
Static on that one. Turn it off. Just go to F1.
No turn off yet, because you want to be synchronous.
And this one you'll have to put through a button.
This one.
Okay. This is not on yet. Are you on F1? Switch to F1. One switch over.
Is that coming in okay?
Now you're hooking up some kind of a spark gap, right?
Yes. Guess we won't need this sign. Go as far as you can with that. Maybe scooch down on the ground. Yeah, right there. Not really. Maybe you can go out that way for the antenna. This is the virtual ground. I prefer a ground connection, like a water pipe or something. shock protection. A little bit higher voltage than last year because I fixed the valve.
He doesn't need when a jolt might do him some good.
Yep. Okay. Hmm? Gloves are on. So tuning. It's my antenna. It's on the ground though. Can you tighten it up? It's on the ground. It might be. You want positive ions from the air. Kind of shorten up the flow on the ground. Wait a minute, it's got to connect. Whoa. Yeah, send this thing flying. Okay, this excess energy is being pumped out of the ground, but I've got no way to show how it's being pumped out of the ground. This isn't very practical. This is a stepped-up version of Nikola Tesla's radiant energy capacitor, charging up the capacitor and then discharging. What the circuit's doing is speeding up that. Otherwise, it would take hours for the capacitor to charge up. This is only demonstrating the principle. And I'm not trying to prove any over unity or anything here. It's just a demonstration of the circuit and the antenna and ground. There's a capacitor inside the valve. Inside that small valve there's a capacitor that's charging up and discharging the energy. Okay, now we can, and you'll see the results that I get by not using an antenna and ground. All the research I've done, I've seen some personal notes of Moray, and there's things indicating in there that there's certain things he showed the public that, you know, quoted as being a snow job, and one of them was the antenna. And I think people want to see an antenna that energy is being extracted out of the air. But as I go, if you read my booklet, you'll see that it was part of the reason why Maury never brought his unit to a commercial level. He had some misunderstandings. And I don't know if anybody saw it up here, but 1 amp was being drawn through this circuit. If I eliminate the antenna and ground, go directly through, and go through, say, a radioactive valve conversion valve, or a fuel cell or an air cell, then the only thing that the circuit is drawing is like 1 milliamp rather than an amp. Just enough to have that circuit oscillate. So you can see when you put an antenna and ground on, you know, I can detach this wire, and you can see a nice blue arc across between the antenna and ground. Maybe I can try to show you that quickly without getting zapped. But at first appearance, it appears that the energy is coming through the antenna and jumping across the gap. And I think another reason why he may have done this is to protect the invention. Let's try that again, see if I can get a blue arc without getting zapped. See the arc? Well, it's very small, see it?
Yeah. Can you feel any tingling there? Is it something to it?
I can feel like a wind, and it makes me nervous because usually in my laboratory, I get hit with 250,000 volts, and it's just a reflex action. Sometimes 1,000,000 volts through my multipliers. Okay, let's hook this up a little bit different now. I'm going to hook directly through the valve, and that was drawing about 1 amp. Okay. Now I get it down to a 1/2 amp without the antenna being on. So I think what's happening, instead of drawing in, what it's doing is sending them out, sending the energy out, and you're wasting it. Okay, what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to hook up high voltage to the cathode side. This is an open cathode, and this is a air metal cell, and normally air just goes through. But in this configuration and in my fuel cell design, I feed high voltage to the input so that ozone's going in. And feeding ozone into this has an amplifier effect. And I'll show you the chemistries that's involved that I was able to bring together from old chemistry and new chemistry that enables to get the cold fusion results that we're seeing, repeatable. If you don't understand what's happening, you can't repeat it all the time. If you understand what's happening, you can design your equipment around to get it every time. Oops, the discharge hit. What I've done is I pre-hooked this up. Everything's right here. Now I'm going to hook the ground end of the unit to the cathode side. Okay. want to just use enough energy to get it ionized in these chambers. Okay. Yeah, see, these are neat little gadgets that I designed for a Velcro company for a child's toy. It was supposed to be Lincoln logs, you know, to light up the structure and Velcro on the ends. But when I was demonstrating it, somebody got a zap, and that was the end of that. You know, I could have fixed it, but it made the executives nervous. You know, they're afraid of a liability. That unit was about 10,000 volts. But, you know, it didn't come in contact with anybody, but, you know, still anything could happen, water on it. But, you know, that's a lot of times. You know, these are specially designed electroless gas tubes and gases in it. Okay. Let's see what we get here. Let's see if we can. What I'm going to do is I'm going to light up this light bulb, and I'm going to go to my speech and let it run. And, you know, parts of my speech I've got other demonstrations to do, and let's just let it run through the speech. That's why I've done it in reverse order this year. This is a 50-watt bulb.
What volt? What volt is it?
12 volts.
Almost 51.
It's a marine light bulb. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to light it up unless this was. We can make 120-volt stacks,
Yeah.
but you know, for this conference, you know, I don't have a kiln yet, and I have to send out plates to be compressed and you know, thrown in the kiln. When I go into manufacturing and you know, have my own kiln, and I'll be able to you know, put these out.
It's good if, you know, you tell the audience, you know, what's
Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to get the output here from this and have itself feed itself. Just what the circuit draws in here, about, I think it was about a ½ amp. Just what the circuit, the oscillation circuit uses. Yeah, what I think I'm going to do is get another. Yeah. No, I'm not connected yet. Connecting the output of this into the device here, the oscillator, to, you know, provide the high voltage. The ground's still connected. Okay. It doesn't look right for some reason. It's negative. Negative. That's not grounded right. Okay. don't want to short out the oscillator. If I wire this wrong, I'll short this right out. Okay, you see the high voltage going through here. Let's bring it down to as low as we can get it. We just want the ozone to be going through there. Okay, that's an air metal cell. And what it's doing is now it's making ozone. It's putting ozone into the cathode plate. Okay, what I'm going to do is give my speech part of it now and just run that. And you can see the input, it's about 1/4 of an amp. That circuit's drawing. Okay, let's see if we can get the overhead first. I want to show you that formula. You might want to write this formula down. Uh-oh. Do we have a marking pen for this? Oh, maybe I'll have to hold it up. Okay. Okay, you can see here, they're calling, this side of the equation is what goes into the anode side of a fuel cell. H3O positive. The technical term for it is hydrated hydrogen ion. But in my mind, if you're adding hydrogen to the water molecule here, it's water hydride. That's what I would call it, but that's not what it's called in the chemistry books. It's called a hydrated, meaning water added to a hydrogen ion. And the right side of the equation here, maybe I can do this. No. Okay, the right side of the equation is a negative hydroxyl ion. And what happens is, in a hydrogen fuel cell, when hydrogen comes in, the platinum, it allows the hydrogen to combine with the water molecule. And on the oxygen side, it allows the oxygen to make hydroxyl ions on that side. And when you put a load on that fuel cell, it produces electrical current, and recombination puts it back into its original H2O formula, two molecules of H2O. Now, with high voltage, we can do this electrostatically by charging the oxygen with negatively. We could even use high frequency on the oxygen, forming ozone. The ozone is absorbed into the water, forming your hydroxyl ions. Now on the hydrogen side, we take the positive ions from our valve here, and now the hydrogen can combine with the water, producing what I call water hydride, and now you can draw electrical current out without the use of a platinum catalyst. Sort of the same thing is happening in the with the cold, and this is a theory. You know, I'm sure Gene Maloff will be all over me for this one. In the cold fusion cell, what you're doing is you'll by electrolysis, your hydrogen's going to one plate and oxygen to the other. And what's happening, the catalyst is forming this forming the water hydride at the anode plate and the hydroxyl ion at the cathode plate. And what happens is, when this is loaded in there enough, these two gases, when they accumulate enough, they cross the separation barrier and they recombine all of a sudden and release a sudden burst of heat energy. So in reality, what's happening is you're extracting the energy, and a lot of people don't know this, but platinum contains two naturally occurring radioactive isotopes, which are alpha emitters. So essentially what you're doing is the particle emissions are creating the ability for the hydrogen to combine with the water molecule, creating the water hydride, and and it builds up, and like I said, it releases an enormous amount of energy. So essentially what's happening is you're converting energy from the nuclear decay of the platinum, radioactive platinum, and you're releasing heat energy, and they're calling it cold fusion because they don't have that, the left. Yeah, it's just that you can't hear me because I'm not on this microphone. Yeah, if this wasn't on, she'd let me know. This is for recording purposes. So, because this side of the equation is overlooked, they don't understand the results. That's my theory. But in practice for fuel cell, I know this works for a fuel cell, and this will make fuel cells practical. You'll be able to buy them cheaply. And I'm seeing the same scenario happening with these big companies that happen with solar panels. It's impractical because the cost of the solar panels. But now they're coming around after, I don't know, 15, 20 years, and they're going to all of a sudden be producing cheap cells now. And now this new thing coming out is the, all these processes to make the plates more efficient with Ballard and these other big fuel cell companies. It's still going to be cost prohibitive. Only people can afford it. A high income bracket can run around in hydrogen-powered fuel-cell cars. But however, I'm bypassing this, and I think some of these companies are going to get awfully mad because they've spent millions of dollars in research and development and all these patents. And I come along, invent the process that does away with the platinum, and now all of a sudden making the fuel cell cheap and practical now. I'm bypassing 20 years. These guys, they're not going to like it. And you're here as a witness today that I developed this process. I have a provisional patent that you have. So if next week they come out with a new name for a new type of fuel cell and call it something else, this videotape is a witness also. I have this provisional patent. Patents can disappear. I've had patents disappear before, and this could be one of them. But you're here today as a witness, and this video is a witness. So hopefully they won't get away with it. Okay, what I'm going to do now is, this is a little bit of a technical speech, but it'll help clear up some of the misconceptions over the years of radiant energy, and it should give you a better understanding of how nuclear processes work, and what Tesla meant by what Tesla meant by radiation being effective, the cosmic particles hitting the Earth. That theory was never accepted. Um, the theory we have today was developed by atomic bomb scientists to confuse us so that we don't know what's really happening in these processes. And I guess their justification for it was national security. Because with this source of energy, you can abuse it and make bombs with it. But it's a horrible thing, because if we use the knowledge for energy, then we can do away with the problems associated with people wanting to blow each other up. And I think throughout history, it's always been a fight over energy in one form or another. And I don't see why OPEC would get mad, because we can make plastic cars that are safer, and plastic planes that are lighter, from the oil products, and stop breathing these carcinogens in the air every day. It's killing everybody. Okay, present day alternative energy researchers find hope in that one day energy will be obtained from the energy that runs the cosmos. In reality, this dream proves to be a lure to its followers beyond the limits of credibility, a quagmire of unsubstantiated hypotheses so bottomless and unreal that even the presented facts of newly conceived energy concepts are wholly inadequate, lacking justification, and incapable of throwing any light on the promise of inexpensive, abundant sources of energy. Nevertheless, we must continue to pursue energy alternatives impartially. Nature was my best teacher. Within her classroom, there are mineral samples that give out pure electrical energy. They are the radioactive rocks. If radioactive matter from these rocks derives its energy elsewhere, this must be a type of entirely different from any that is presently known, for it must be capable of penetrating without loss hundreds of feet of solid rock. Nikola Tesla's investigations brought him to the conclusion that the Earth was being showered with small particles, each carrying so small of a charge that we are justified in calling them neutrons. He stated that they move with great velocity exceeding that of light. Dr. Thomas Morey called into existence a new kind of unlimited radiant energy, the cosmic ray, permeating all space and all matter, unimpeded. Such a view, at first glimpse, makes perfect sense with the continuous and permanent activity of radium extracted from certain rocks for an indefinite time. There is no reason why radioactivity, however intense and powerful, should decay or diminish with the passage of time. At some point in my own research, I had to ask myself two important questions. One, is there anything opposed either to reason or to probability in the view that energy evolved from radium is actually derived from an existent, previously unsuspected internal process within the atom? And two, within this process, the element experiences a transformation into other elements. How is it that such enormous stores of energy and matter have remained so long unknown? In my experience, a specimen of radium chloride is dissolved in water, and the liquid is then evaporated. Bringing this compound back to its original dry state, it is found that as the result of this very simple operation, the radium has lost the greater part of its radioactivity in the process. The penetrating beta and gamma rays completely disappear. The remaining non-penetrating alpha rays will be only 1/4 as powerful as they were initially. Then a strange thing happens. Left alone, the radium will spontaneously recover its lost activity. Little by little, day by day, until at the end of a month, it will be no less active than it was before it went into solution. This appears to be in direct conflict with the zealous statement that radioactivity of radium cannot be affected by any known process. If we study this experiment carefully, we will find that when radium chloride is dissolved in water, something escapes into the air. And this something is intensely radioactive. It diffuses in the air, but remains contained with a gas-tight closed vessel. In short, this something is a gas possessing the property of radioactivity to a very intense degree. This gas was called animation in the days of old. Today it's called radon-222. It has had half-life around 3.8 days, This radon gas is highly radioactive. Thorium releases radon-220 that is intensely radioactive and has a half-life of around 55.6 seconds. Uranium emits radon-219, the most intensely radioactive, having a half-life of only 3.96 seconds. Radium that has been separated from its parent source will rapidly decay. It is easily enough to conclude from this experiment that energy is in fact stored within the radium atom. Accounting for a comparatively rapid decay of the activity of the generated radon gas, this gas is depleting its natural store of energy so rapidly that it is soon exhausted. On the other hand, how is it that the gradual recovery to radioactivity of the parent radium can be explained? This question is the golden key to unlocking the secret of its power. If it is true that energy comes from within, as large as the store of energy within the atom must be to explain its radioactivity, then it cannot be infinite. Therefore, it is expected that the activity will slowly decay with the passing of time. If two radioactive bodies, one each more radioactive than the other, are compared together, it is to be expected that the activity of the more powerful body will decay faster than that of the other. A time will come for both of these substances when the internal stores of energy are exhausted, at which time the radioactivity will come to an end. Therefore, radium, the substance contained in the store of energy, can no longer be radium when the energy is lost. Coal is not coal after it is burned. When energy is obtained from matter, the matter changes. Before it can be regained in its former state, the energy evolved must be put back. In no case is it possible for matter to be part with its stored of energy and remain the same. Otherwise, we would quickly realize perpetual motion would be easily constructed. We conclude if the energy is stored up in the radium, it must be within the atom. Therefore, if radium changes, it must be a change of the atom and of the element itself. This change could be its ultra-chemical reaction, which is a more fundamental and deep-seated change than the normal chemistry of any known kind of material change. Until the discovery of radioactivity, such changes certainly had never been observed. The energy of radium comes from within. Then radium must be subjected to this ultra-chemistry that has eluded the chemist. Once this process of ultra-chemistry is understood as a special extension of chemistry, instead of some vaguely possible transcendental nuclear condition in the sun and stars, the answers will become as sure as the nose on your face. Imagine a month has passed. The radium chloride is once again dissolved in water and evaporated down to dryness exactly as before. Once more you'll find in the process the radium has lost the same large proportion of its radioactivity and again gains a new amount of radon no less than before it went into solution. Repeat this experiment as often as you like and you'll find the results always the same. As the radon you separate from the radium is decaying away from day to day, the radium will generate a spontaneous fresh batch. If we are going to make any sense of this, we have to answer the nagging question: from where does this energy of radium come? Does it come from nowhere, or is it being newly created out of nothing? This is a view that is not acceptable for a healthy 21st century physical science. If our doctrines of energy are true, then there are only two possible answers to consider. Either the energy must be derived from within the radium, or it must be supplied from elsewhere. This simple narrowing down of all the possible answers may appear to you somewhat simplistic, but in reality it carries with it far more than appears on the surface. Being a minute property of the element, radioactivity is therefore a property of the atom. And if we say that the energy comes from within, this means that there must exist an enormous and not previously suspected store of energy in matter, or at least in radioactive matter. Dr. Morey often advanced a theory that radium acts merely as a transforming mechanism, that it converts the cosmic ray into electrical particles. He states that it retransmits energy in a form that we recognize. Tesla also entertained this view. There are electrical transformers dotted all over our country receiving transmitted but dangerous high-tension currents from the central power station and delivering comparatively safe low-tension currents to your house. Are the atoms of radium acting as the transformers of a mysterious mysterious unknown source of external energy, first receiving it and then delivering it up again in the form that we can recognize. It may be said at once that so vague a view, postulating the existence of a limitless and mysterious supply of omnipresent energy, cannot be directly disproved. One thing is for certain: it provides a way to escape from some of the more distasteful logical assertions that all forms of energy are stored within the atoms and molecules. If radium owes its activity to an energy source outside of itself, one has only to isolate the external source. We have seen that to quench radioactivity or to modify it in any way is one of the things mainstream science cannot do. Experiment has proven that even in its natural state in the mine, hundreds of feet down deep in the earth, pitchblende exhibits its normal radioactivity. Over 100 years ago, scientists concluded that some sort of radiation must exist in the atmosphere because under all circumstances, air is found to be positively ionized slightly, atoms at a minus electron. The fact that this radiation is constantly much stronger at high altitudes than at the Earth's surface leads us to conclude that such radiation does not originate on this planet, but rather from somewhere in the outer regions of space. The fact that the intensity of this radiation does not increase during daylight hours eliminates the sun as its source. Also, the intensity does not decrease during the day or increase by night. Therefore, they cannot be a result of any particular group of stars. Does not the free animating state of a salt of radium teach us anything about its decay mechanism? Results obtained by Dr. Aldous Gottschalk and Otto Hahn in the 1920s, now this was before Otto Hahn got involved with the atomic bomb material, atomic bomb era. It proved conclusively that when radium becomes finely divided, it most readily emits radon. This teaches us that radioactive change is affected by confinement. How many scientists have paid attention to this all-important lesson? Is it actually the true mechanism that is behind what is being called fission? It is my hypothesis that the seat of radioactivity is due to radon gas trapped within the lattice of certain heavy metals. The best comparison I can think of is coal and the stored hydrogen gas within its lattice. When coal reacts with oxygen, it is transformed into CO2 and then it is expelled, releasing its stored reserve of hydrogen. Pretty much the same principle occurs when radon gas is released from its heavy metal prison. The reactant in this later case is a neutron from a previous radon gas emission. Radon reacts with a metal losing a neutron to it and releases a free neutron in the reaction. When this occurs, the radon becomes highly unstable, emitting alpha particles, and rapidly transforms into stable lead. From this reaction, we can see that radon is not as inert as we were led to believe. In fact, it is at the very foundation of nuclear reactions. Since the discovery of radium by Madame Curie, the fundamental method of its extraction has not changed. The process utilizes the same methods that were instituted by Madame Curie and M. de Beaune. Radioactive ores were first treated with a warm solution of hydrochloric acid that dissolves the metals. The addition of sulfuric acid precipitates insoluble barytes that are always present, carrying along with them all the radium as barium sulfate. It is necessary that barium is present in this process. If the mineral itself does not contain a sufficient quantity, then some barium has to be added. It is said that the barium acts as a carrier to the radium. Can there be any other explanation? It never made much sense to me why the radium would not precipitate out without the barium. I simply could not accept the notion that it acted as a carrier. The answer to this problem comes relatively simple if you let nature be your teacher and forget what the textbooks tell you. We know from her lessons that radiation can be induced into non-radioactive elements, do we not? Could it be then that something in the separated hydrochloric solution is transforming the barium into what we call radium? Alakazam, lo and behold, it sure is. It's called uranium-235. Radium may be synthetically manufactured, by fusing dry uranium nitrate mixed with about 0.5% of dry barium nitrate. This is done in the heat of an electric arc. The mass is then treated with nitric acid, water, and sulfuric acid in succession. Radioactive barium sulfate, possessing all the physical properties of the element discovered by Madame Curie, is obtained by this formula. This material will emit ultraviolet rays, X-rays, excite phosphor screens, and cause air to conduct electricity. The chloride and the carbonate of radium may also be created by using radium chloride or uranium carbonate respectively, and will have the same properties. Uranium nitrate typically contains about 0.72% U-235. The barium reacts with the U-235, creating pure radium. Take note here that this is not an ultrachemical reaction, and that the barium is not a carrier as believed. Best results are obtained when 0.72% barium is added, being equal or less than the amount of U-235 contained in the nitrate. Sulfuric acid is added after this reaction takes place, then radium sulfate is precipitated. This material can now be filtered or removed from the solution. The synthetically created radium radioisotope results when barium reacts with radon-219. Radon-219 is the animation that is expelled from the U-235 in the ore. It cannot come into being otherwise. All other radioactive isotopes may be called into existence by this process, using U-235 as a parent source. Radioisotopes procured by this ultrachemical process will have far-reaching ramifications if and when this process is taken under the wing of mainstream science. Radioisotopes could be made to order literally in a jar. These findings indicate that all radioactive substances originate from U-235 atom. Now the question arises, where did the U-235 originate? I can only speculate at this point that it is created when a cosmic ray hits a stable U-238 atom head-on. If my conclusions turn out to be correct, then the energy stored in radiant matter is a product of an external cosmic force occurring over billions of years. It is also due to the internal workings of the radiant elements and without contradiction. Mother Nature offers us a clean nuclear process to supply the world with energy. My reasoning is based upon her process that leaves behind a clean, non-toxic ash. You have seen this non-toxic ash in children's balloons at birthday parties. The inert gas that I am referring to is called helium. Could we dim the lights here? I brought here a very low-level radioactive ore, and it's completely impregnated with helium gas that will show up on the UV lamp here. Now it's not very, can't see it very well, but can people see that green fluorescence in there? Yeah. You probably can come up and shine the UV lamp on the rocks after this lecture yourself. But my point that I'm trying to make here is that when naturally occurring radioactive ore decays, the nuclear ash that's left behind is an inert element, helium, and it cannot hurt anybody. It's completely safe. However, what they do in a nuclear reactor is they speed up the reaction so fast that it tears the atoms. Neutrons fly everywhere, protons, electrons, everything's flying, and because of this, all kinds of you name it, every element created from the tearing apart, and not only normal elements created, but radioisotopic elements are created. Strontium-90 being one of them. You know, if you have a meltdown, and strontium-90, radioactive strontium-90 is released into the atmosphere, chemically similar to calcium. you're going to breathe that in, drink it in the water, and it's going to settle into your bones, and you're going to surely die a horrible death. And that's because they're forcing this material to do what it's not designed to do. There's several others radioisotopes, and nuclear activists are right on the head. If they only knew just how deadly these nuclear power plants are, I think they would be going in there with guns, and because a fuel rod is under enormous pressure and heat, and I can't imagine that radioactive gas is not leaking into the environment from this high pressure. Now I get a report from South Africa around these plants. There's power plants, tremendous amounts of damage is done to the environment. Pristine areas are damaged forever, and it's a horrible abuse to nature and to ourselves. We're killing ourselves, and because of the propaganda of the atomic bomb era, people equate nuclear decay with death and destruction. If you have an understanding of how radioactive works, then you will also understand that using the natural decay rate of these substances, it's a gift